Hoo-wee, it looks like we somehow made our way back to EGAD's lab by not only about the fact that we can able to possibly try to able to actually access to the true final mission in the game, all thanks to the forms of capturing all 5 of those boos in Treacherous Mansion, but it's also about the fact that we can able to exponentially, for this entire week anyway, we can able to actually show off the entirety of ScareScraper Mode, but that's besides the point. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, it is I am the one and only Mexi here once again, and I am back for the likes of the Mexi Toys videos. So ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for some more of Let's Play of Luigi's Mansion 2, aka Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon for those of you who lived in North America, for the Nintendo 3DS/Nintendo Switch, as we are still playing through Luigi's Mansion 2 HD. So last time, not only did we somehow tackle through the final boss mission in terms of Treacherous Mansion, but also, out of nowhere, we somehow transported into the final area in the whole entire game, which pretty much leads us to the final boss in the game, which is none other than King Boo himself in King Boo's Illusion. Now, despite the fact that we did okay enough in both of those bosses in particular, which appears to be the final processor, in addition to King Boo, but as you can tell, we were so close to able to get ourselves with the 3-star ranking medal. Mind you, about the fact that it has been about 3 days ago since I actually have last played this game for sure, just because, well, you probably get the idea for this point, because after all, we've already managed able to wrap things up quite a few Let's Plays in the past few days, ranging from the entire Sonic the Hedgehog 4, alongside with the Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening remake, so chances are though is about the fact that we've only got this game remaining, along with any other like Let's Plays in the future, so either way, so yeah, everything else checks out there, and of course we somehow claim ourselves the final piece of the Dark Moon, and actually speaking of, we somehow restored the actual Dark Moon itself, so Evershade Valley has been fully restored and everything, so, and somehow we easily did manage to take care of King Boo, except this time he no longer has Bowser's body to able to take control of it. So as a result though, it can be quite a challenging final boss fight, I will admit it though right away, but I digress. So today for this video, is that technically this is actually going to be the true finale in terms of the Dark Moon quest before we move on to some multiplayer stuff. Because of that though, we're about to be heading off to the true final mission in the whole entire game, which is Terrifying Invasion. So as a result though, yeah, we've only got one more mission to go, not only for the entire game, but as well as the forms of Treacherous Mansion as well. Now I found it was a little bit weird, is about the fact that if you do manage to able to try to take care of King Boo at first, then basically though is about the fact that you do realize about the fact that if you do manage to able to leave the entire mission, specifically in King Boo's Illusion, basically though, if you somehow pause the game and try to exit out, I'm sure there might be a chance for you to be able to actually access this particular mission right here, as we somehow dive into right now, which I'm sure it's still accessible, but of course, much like always, you do need to be able to capture the remaining boos, and good thing we've already did manage to be able to find every single boos in the entire playthrough itself, so this means about the fact that this will actually be the last time we can able to actually go into the forms of this mission structure, and as a result though, we can possibly try to able to capture the final batch of ghosts before we somehow done every single aspects in terms of the Dark Moon quest in Luigi's Mansion 2.
Whoa. Ooh.
So yeah, I guess there are quite a few things I would like to mention about this. Is about the fact that, well, today's date of course there is the 28th of October today, in some cases in 2024 today. So generally speaking though, it's about the fact that we've got about 3 days left until Halloween is about to start, and generally speaking though, it's about the fact that I can assure you for this point that the actual uploading schedules has been changed once again, and this time around though is about the fact that, as you probably already expect from that particular hint, as I somehow stated earlier, hopefully though we can able to actually finish up every single aspect in terms of Luigi's Mansion 2 by able to actually showing off some multiplayer from ScareScraper Mode, or technically if you lived in the European countries, specifically the 3DS version, the multiplayer mode was actually known as Thrill Tower, which I'm not exactly sure why they somehow got that name change from the European version on the 3DS version specifically, because unlike the Switch port, I should say, basically that was about the fact that they basically stuck with the forms of this traditional ScareScraper mode, but that's besides the point. So anyway, and as I stated before, is about the fact that it's been about 3 days ago since I actually have last played this game for sure. Not only for the fact that we can able to actually, you know, already did manage to able to finish up with the forms of certain Let's Plays recently, but it's also about the fact that recently though, I've basically did manage to able to be continuously playing through Sonic X Shadow Generations recently. Well, mind you, at first glance, we are going to be experiencing on our own time with not only for the Switch version, but as well as the forms of the Xbox One version first. Because, well, as far as what Sonic has already stated this earlier, ever since in yesterday's late unboxing video for the likes of Sonic X Shadow Generations, by the way, obviously though, much like the forms of how it does it not only for Sonic Colors Ultimate, but as well as the forms of Sonic Frontiers, and possibly maybe at some point with Sonic Superstars as well. Basically though, we'll save the PS4 version for the sake of Let's Plays department, especially concerning for the fact that after all, that PlayStation versions do have more content than the forms of how it does it on not only Xbox version, but as well as the Nintendo Switch version as well, mainly because of that particular downloadable thing in regards to the forms of Sonic X Shadow Generations Dark Beginnings Prologue Animate shorts, so I digress. But then again though, that particular topic can wait if we decide able to tackle for that particular game, but in Journey forms of it next year for some time. So, anyways though, straight to the point though actually, is about the fact that there's also another thing is worth mentioning for, is that did you guys know about the fact that if you ever own the Xbox versions, or specifically the PlayStation versions of Sonic X Shadow Generations, well, you do realize about the fact that I did recently manage to able to double check in Journey forms of not only the achievements, but as well as the trophies lists, respectively, and as far as I'm aware, there's a massive differences between the forms of not only the most recent release of Sonic Generations, or simply Sonic X Shadow Generations, in comparison to the forms of how it does in the original version of Sonic Generations. Like, for instance, I get the feeling about the fact that on the Xbox version, as far as I can recall, I believe they do somehow manage to able to have themselves about 40 achievements this time, as opposed to 49 achievements, whilst meanwhile for the PlayStation side of things though, I can assure to you about the fact that the original version of Sonic Generations for the PlayStation 3 used to have 50 trophies, but now, in Journey forms of Sonic X Shadow Generations, it's now down to 41 trophies. So no matter what though, there are certain trophies / achievements is no longer accessible in regards to the forms of getting trophies or achievements, ranging from, let's just say, online related stuff, specifically in regards to the forms of the 30-second trial, alongside with the forms of ranked attack for likely also for time attack ranking mode for online capabilities, or something related to that. And as well as that though, is about the fact that, well, there's also one of those trophies and achievements that I'm not exactly pleased to able to actually make a comeback for. That's of course Can't Touch This achievement / trophy, which, if you know what I'm talking about, well, spoiler alert for those who have not experienced the original version of the game before, basically what happens was though is about the fact that in order able to get that achievement or trophy, basically though you have to defeat the time meter without getting a single damage touch, or specifically without even like getting hit by the forms of specific attacks from the time meter. So no matter what though, and as far as the forms of other trophies and achievements they somehow got listed, specifically with the forms of Shadow Generations though, I think it's probably best if we're not gonna spoil things too much, especially concerning for the fact that obviously though Sonic Generations has been out for a very long time now, specifically the original version of the game, back in 2011 that is, so I'm pretty much used to it at this point, especially concerning for the fact that obviously though is about the fact that the control types we somehow use is of course the legacy controls, because obviously though I'm more accustomed to that, because I'm not a big fan of the forms of the standard mode, because usually relatively speaking though, when it comes to forms of linear path, the linear Sonic games for that particular point, that I'm pretty much not accustomed to the forms of a similar control style as in Sonic Frontiers. Although, unlike in Sonic Frontiers though, on the other hand, that I feel like that the controls are extremely tight to me though, despite the fact that the momentum in midair can be felt a bit too wonky at times. But regardless of everything else though, is about the fact that it's most likely because I'm pretty much used to with like not using boost from the likes of utilizing with the forms of trigger button, because I'm pretty much used to with the forms of standard button controls. Like for instance on the PlayStation version, that basically though pressing the square button to boost and using the X button to boost on the Xbox version. Now I suppose on the Switch version you can be able to press the Y button, assuming about the fact that if you either use the Joy-Cons or the Pro Controller. Well, mind you, I'm still using the Pro Controller a lot, especially concerning for the fact I'm still basically more accustomed to using the Switch Pro Controller ever since enjoying the forms of any other Switch games recently, including the forms of Super Mario Party Jamboree, and as well as from that though, the upcoming Mario Luigi Brothership. So because of that though, yeah, everything else checks out there. And as you can tell, we somehow concludes the true final mission in the whole entire game, and as a result, we somehow guarantee to end things off with a glorious 3-star ranking medal. So yeah, all in all, pretty top-notch, all things considered. So either way though, and I believe that pretty much does it for every single extra missions in Luigi's Mansion 2, aka Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon, if you lived in North America, mind you. Now, before we end off here, though, there is technically one last thing I want to show off. That's what it appears to be about the fact that, do you remember during the Falls within the, on Friday, the 25th of October specifically, technically we've already done the boss mission in during the Falls within Treacherous Mansion, but as a result though, it's about the fact that when you first time beating that boss, straight to the point though, it'll just simply lead you to the final boss straight away, which is of course King Boo, and as a result we ended up being King Boo's illusion. So now, about the fact that now it's about time for me to able to actually show off the alternate dialogue boxes if you managed able to fight against with this particular final processor again. But as a result though, it's about the fact I just want to let you guys know it's able to show you guys the alternate dialogue if you do manage to able to beat that particular boss for the second time after dealing with the forms of King Boo, that is. So, but I digress. There's also another thing it's worth noting for actually, is about the fact that one of those games in particular has recently got listed for able to actually going to be releasing at some point until November. That game in questioning is Metal Slug Tactics, and as a result though, it's about to due out at some point on November in 2024, specifically in November 5th, which is roughly about 2 days before Mario Luigi Brothership is going to be releasing during that specific period. So either way though, so no matter what though, is about the fact that, as I stated before, we're about to able to hit back into that particular boss mission right here again, just to show you guys the forms of the alternate dialogue with you know, Professor Egad after dealing with this boss fight for the second time. So either way, now I felt it was a little bit odd about the fact that in regards to the forms of Metal Slug Tactics game, that it was been first announced back in 2022, and as a result though, it's about the fact that it was originally going to be planned to able to actually release in journey forms within that year, but it was being delayed until 2023, and now in this year for 2024, which eventually though we somehow finally get ourselves the actual proper release date for that game, which as I stated earlier is going to be releasing until 2 days before Mario Luigi Brothership, which is of course 5th of November in 2024. So generally speaking though, that's as far as I can try to describe about this, but potentially speaking, so I digress. So there's also another thing it's worth noting for actually, is about the fact that I've seen a lot of instances about the fact that when it comes to the forms of other reviewers out there, specifically with Sonic X Shadow Generations basically, it seems about the fact that we actually got ourselves quite a number of positivity going on, ranging from not only IGN, but as well as the forms of PSX Brazil, as well as Game Red, Checkpoint, Gaming Bible, CG Magazine, and Gamers RD, Gaming Trend, and Worth Playing, and Well Played, and COG Connected, and as well as the Forms of God is a Geek. And on top of all that stuff, though, there's also Push Square, and Metro, The Gamer, and pretty much anything else I can probably think about on top of my head, because as far as I'm aware, thank goodness IGN did somehow receive the forms of Sonic X Shadow Generations a pretty dang good score within 9 out of 10, much like the forms of how it does it on Super Mario Party Jamboree ever since it journey forms of it around a couple of days ago. And in fact, no matter what though, it's been about roughly 11 days ago since Super Mario Party Jamboree did somehow first came out, which again, time flies, what you expect. So generally speaking now, that I get the feeling about the fact that unlike in Sonic Colors Ultimate, it did somehow receive some very mixed reviews, mainly because not only for the forms of how the fact that it did manage to came out during the forms of in a pandemic year, or specifically sometime in 2021, but it's also about the fact that it does have some technical issues depending on what system you're playing on, and on top of all that stuff though, it does manage to able to have some questionable changes here and there, specifically with the forms of the lighting, and on top of all that stuff though, with the forms of, you know, remixed music sometimes, but either way though, that's as far as I can try to think about it. So it may look like about the fact that Sonic X Shadow Generations has indeed managed to receive a lot better than the forms of how it does on the previous Sonic game remastered, which is of course, as I mentioned this earlier, Sonic Colors Ultimate. Although don't get me wrong, I still managed to enjoy Sonic Colors Ultimate even to this day, but it's just about the fact that while looking back on it though, it does have a lot of issues after the events of when, you know, ever since it journey forms within 2021, which I know is kind of hard for me to explain about this sometimes, because I already know for a fact it's been almost 3 years ago since I actually have last played Sonic Colors Ultimate, especially concerning for the fact that after all, I've already 100% everything in that game, not only once, but 3 times, ranging from 3 different systems for PlayStation 4, Nintendo Switch, and of course Xbox One, so... But yeah, you get the idea for this point. So, but as you can see, we did somehow face off against with the final processor again, and once you look at that, we are no longer going to be able to try to stick around with King Boo, because, you know, we somehow already deal with the forms of King Boo, so naturally speaking, I was about the fact that we can now able to actually see EGAT's dialogue with the forms of that particular mission's accomplished or something. So either way though, even though technically speaking, I was about the fact that we've already did manage to able to capture the 5th and final processor, because, you know, that he does have 5 horns, as opposed to the forms of how it does it for 1, 2, 3, or 4, respectively. So, I digress. So, yeah, it seems all good and everything, except there are certain reviewers, specifically, yet again no, much like the forms of how it does it on Super Mario Party Jamboree, not only does Eurogamer, but as well as GameSpot, for some reason receives Sonic X Shadow Generations a mixed bag result, which as a result, both did somehow receive the game as in 6 out of 10, and I was like, are you kidding me? Well, mind you about the fact I don't usually look upon reviews as much as the next guy, but regardless of such though, it's a little bit glaring to me when it comes to able to actually seeing certain comparisons with the forms of other review scores in comparison to one another. Well, it's hard for me to explain because again, it's been about, you know, 3 days ago since I actually have last played this for sure. So either way though, so yeah, we are essentially done every single aspect in terms of the Dark Moon quest. Mind you about the fact I do need to go back onto some other missions on my spare own time, just for the sake of trying to able to actually guarantee to get myself my glorious 3-star ranking medal. I mean, some of them were actually felt a bit lengthy to try to deal with, but some of them are pretty quick and stuff like that, specifically in the forms of in the mission E-4 ambush maneuver. But regardless of everything else though, yeah, that's what I can say about the forms of Dark Moon quest. So either way, now before we end off the video right here, let me quickly show off EGAT's vault for presumably for the final time if possible. So just to ensure for the fact that we can able to actually double check on other bits worth noting for. Now we've already seen the forms of the other 3 parts right there, but the ones we haven't exactly checked upon, and that's what appears to be the ghost container. So basically though, we actually have a choice between not only the Evershade Valley ghosts, but as well as the forms of ScareScraper ghosts. Now keep this in mind though, is about the fact that after all, we did somehow already captured every single types of ghosts in Evershade Valley as a result. So as you can see, it's about the fact that not only do we able to get our first glimpse of these specific ghosts, but also it somehow tells you what their names are. Like for instance, greenies, slammers, hiders, sneakers, and all that stuff. And there's also a brief description about the forms of certain types of ghosts, much like the forms of how it does on the first Luigi's Mansion game. However, the biggest difference is this time around though is about the fact that obviously though we are no longer going to be capturing portrait ghosts anymore. Well, it wasn't until whenever we get on to Luigi's Mansion 3 that we pretty much might be familiar with that particular system as far as I'm aware. But then again though, we'll get to Luigi's Mansion 3 until next year, so I will promise you guys about that, especially concerning for the fact that we always attempt to do Luigi's Mansion games in during forms of around the time when Halloween is getting approaching, so yeah, nothing else I can really say about it. Now, in terms of the forms of ScareScraper ghosts, as far as I would like to point things out, you can only try to able to capture them by simply trying to able to go into, what else? The ScareScraper mode itself. So either way though, yeah, that's as far as I can try to say about this. Potentially speaking though, oh, I totally forgot, there was actually a stronger variant of Poltergeist right there. So, yeah, I wasn't expecting that. And there's the forms of the gold greenie, which as a result we did capture this thing a lot. And there's also the question mark, which actually as it turns out is Polterpup, because obviously I've already mentioned about this quite a few times, especially concerning journey forms within the previous missions. So yeah, that's all I can really think about it. Well, mind you, I did manage to play ScareScraper Mode on my spare own time, specifically on the Switch version, because as you probably already know, the 3DS online functionality no longer becomes function, so as a result though, this might be the only method to able to show you guys ScareScraper Mode. So, this is one of those ghosts that was only exclusive to ScareScraper Mode, and that's what appears to be Lady Gug, which actually represents Ladybug's skin of Slammer, so makes sense to able to actually match the forms of the red colored ghosts and all that stuff. So yeah, speaking of which though, in regards to the forms of ScareScraper Mode, suffice to say though, I suppose we should probably end things off this point right here. So join me next time, or should I say tune us tomorrow for more of Let's Play of Luigi's Mansion 2, aka Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon. Is that we're going on to the multiplayer mode, which is of course ScareScraper Mode, and as far as I'm aware, it does manage to contain not only online functionality, but it's also about the fact that this particular mode does feature 3 modes. So yeah, I will see you guys until tomorrow, so later fellas.